Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Sports Trigger. Travis, are you ready to talk some college football again today?
Let's go college football.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Sports Trigger. Travis, there's some games already going on right now. What do you think? I saw Clemson's up 14-0 already. Then you got Penn State, who is now up 7-0 on a punt return touchdown. Maryland and Texas actually having a little early battle right now, 7-7, a little struggle mode on, I would say, Texas's part more so than Maryland. So what do you think so far?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I'm just ready I'm glad, I should say, that college football is back. And, it's interesting to see all the storylines actually come into play. We're actually on the field now, no more time for talk, time to show up and even put those doubters, down, making them shut up with maybe, some doubt for certain seasons and having lost certain teams. And, Clemson, obviously, they've lost so much, especially I know that they just scored again, so they're up 21-0. So, that's impressive. So it's definitely interesting to see the storylines that come out of opening weekend, if you will, because, there's so many different games going on, so many different things that people have been wanting to look at going into this weekend, and coming out of this weekend, there's going to be even more storylines.
Well, interesting you mentioned doubt. Doubt comes to my mind now when you look at how Washington ended up playing against Rutgers last night. Very sloppy game, slow start, didn't play really well, couldn't find their rhythm. But they did end up winning 30-14. So do you think this is just a one-time scare? Do you think Rutgers is maybe better? Or do you think Washington might struggle a little bit this year?
It's interesting, and I know both of us expected Washington to cover, 28 points, something along those lines as far as the spread.
And then you had the 53, I think it was over and under 53 total points in the game. So we were expecting that because it did no rain or anything like that, so I was a little surprised by that score.
Yeah, in Washington returned all their starters on offense except for Ross, who went off to the NFL, so he's an exceptional talent. But I fully expected, you have Jake Browning back, you have Gaskin, their running back, Pettis, other notable players on offense, so I definitely think it was disappointing. I don't think that it should be a time where, Washington fans or people who are high on Washington for this year really get scared for that matter. But, it is a slight cause for concern. It's against Rutgers. Like you said, it's not like it was sloppy weather or anything. So, you can't really blame their play on that. So, I don't know. Maybe it's just first weekend. Maybe they're trying to get back in the rhythm of things, playing a team that's, they're not practicing against their own defense. So that could be part of it as well.
Yeah, ultimately it doesn't matter as long as they keep winning. Right. Washington at least built themselves up as a national power, even just with 1 year last year. And with their coach back there, there's a lot of confidence in pollsters, I think. And that's one of the reasons why they still made the playoffs, regardless of a weak schedule last year. I do think the Pac-12 is going to be better this year than they were last year. And so that will help out as all. So, we can't get too overhyped after these first week games because if you look at that, then Colorado State looked like they were going to be an amazing team after they beat Oregon State. They looked really strong there. And then they scored 3 points last night.
Yeah, exactly. And there's always in any sport, there's always overhype, if you will, and expectations that are formed through the first week's games. Especially college football because there's such a large following, fan base. It's your school, it's your team, and especially when it comes to the first week, unless you're really playing a top tier team, then I don't really see why you should change any expectations. We have Florida State and Bama tonight. So, regardless of who loses that game, I think it'll be a close game or close enough, if you will. There's still plenty of season to go on. So even the loser of games such as that, more high-profile games, they still have a great chance to win their conference and, really do something throughout the rest of the year.
Yeah, but one thing that I don't want to see is a rematch in the college football playoff. A lot of people, they're like, Florida State, Alabama, whoever loses, if they run the table after that, it'll be fine. But the rematches never end up being the exact same as the previous game, really. I mean, you look at the LSU-Bama game where they had a great regular season matchup, close, and then the national championship was probably one of the worst that I've ever watched. It was just boring, not fun. Bama, destroying them. LSU couldn't even, they didn't have an offense. It was nowhere, but they'd already beat Bama. So I think, the loser of this game, depending on, the outcome of a lot of other games and a lot of other teams, even if they run the table, then I don't think they should just get first pluck because they played a great regular season game and then they want to see a rematch. I think rematches aren't fun for me. They just aren't. You play it out in the season, and this is a neutral site game even more. So when it's a neutral site game, it makes me feel even better about the result compared to looking at a game where it's like, oh, yeah, they won, but it was at, LSU or at some other place with the home field advantage. You can look back to some of the other rematches that have occurred in the past. Back in the Steve Spurrier days with Florida, them and Bobby Bowden and Florida State had a rematch, and then I believe Florida lost the first game and then absolutely came out and trounced Florida State. I want to say it was the Sugar Bowl or something along those lines in the 90s. So it just doesn't work out, and it's not fun. I mean, yeah, if the other team wins after losing during the regular season, it's great for the fans. But if you're not a fan of those two schools, it's kind of boring. It's kind of like, wait, somebody else should get a chance. So big time against the rematches. Looking today's game later on, who are some players that you want to look for and that might kind of come up and surprise you that not everybody's talking about?
So I think there are definitely several different players. Obviously there are those players that everyone's talked about, especially for the Bama-Florida State game, being Derwin James. You have Jalen Hurts returning, Calvin Ridley, Bo Scarborough. The whole backfield for Alabama. They have so many people in that stable, but really, I think who I'm most interested in seeing would have to be the Florida State running back, the freshman. He's the name eludes me, but I know
Cam Akers.
Cam Akers. Okay, yes. And he's had a lot of hype. The spring game for them, I know he did really well, and there's a lot of buzz going on about him. Obviously, huge shoes to fill with Dalvin Cook, huge shoes. But if this kid can come out and if he can be somewhat impressive against Alabama, which is going to be hard to do, I should say, then I think that's going to set the tone for the rest of the year. And if they can actually get another solid running back to back up Francois for Florida State, with how many times he had to drop back and got just blasted, game in and game out.
He had no offensive line.
Yeah.
And they're probably not going to be better this year. I have a firm understanding that they're probably not going to be that much better this year. I think it's hard to have that big of an improvement over 1 year.
And I think this year it's really going to depend more on their defense, because obviously you look last year after they lost Derwin James, even when they had Derwin James, they were, I guess they were doing okay against Ole Miss, but then, the rest of the year, obviously it's noted what happened when Lamar Jackson went up against them, and, obviously North Carolina, Mitch Trubisky beat them as well. So I think that's going to be the one vocal point for them this year, is with Derwin James back healthy, what's their defense going to do? I think that would be the part where they can improve on. Offensively, I think they'll be fine, but defensively, especially tonight, will be interesting, because obviously Alabama has stars left and right, wide receiver, running backs, QB. I'm sure that their line is good. It's usually consistent. So I definitely think defense will be the one thing that they can improve on this year, to where they can be slightly better from last year.
Well, they have all the athletes. I think they're going to be fine. I mean, the offensive line is the key. If they protect the quarterback, Francois, open up some holes for Akers, have a solid running game, I think they're going to be fine, especially throughout the year. And then, they have Derwin James. They have multiple other athletes, NFL talent. They're going to be fine on defense, too. Oh, just in another update, Maryland is now up 14-7 as we're talking over Texas. So I don't know. Maybe the backers of Herman, maybe it'll take a little longer than just 1 year. Maybe it'll take a second year for him to get that full talent together. But it's still early. Obviously, plenty of season left to go. So outside of the Alabama and Florida State game, what are two games that you're really looking forward to watching this year? Or well, not this year, but today.
Yeah. Well, obviously, being a Notre Dame fan, I have to go with the Notre Dame Temple game because last year was beyond disappointing. You go from the year before that, they make it to a New Year's Six bowl game. Granted, they got beat pretty handily against Ohio State and Zeke Elliott, but I think at that point that team was just on a mission and a roll after having lost the last game that they had to where they got put in that position. But I definitely Notre Dame. I'm always interested to see their offense, new quarterback. There's a little bit of buzz going on with him saying that he's gonna have a great year, but until I see it, granted it's against Temple, but typically they have a good defense. So I want to see how they do going into next week's game, which is Georgia. Well, granted it's at home, but that's going to be a great game. So see how they may fare next week. And as far as the second game, I have to still go with Michigan and Florida just because, even though all the suspensions have happened for Florida, I want to see, can they actually have a QB that can move the ball, or is it going to be just another year with Florida and Jim McElwain, or I should say just for Florida football in the past, 7 years, where they don't have a quarterback that can move the ball. Granted, Will Grier when they had him, but they only had him for a short amount of time.
Yeah, and that's where I'm going to jump in and say Florida and Michigan. I'm a huge Michigan fan with all the turnover at Michigan. Player-wise, it'll be really fun to watch just to see where they're, kind of looking to go throughout the rest of the year. A lot of new faces. That's always fun in college football to see all the new players come through. Notre Dame Temple, not too much for me, but I think Notre Dame's going to end up winning that. The Notre Dame's defense is still going to be the highlight of, how good are they going to play. The other game, though, is West Virginia and Virginia Tech, actually. That one, I want to see how Grier comes out firing, because I think West Virginia can win that, and they can win it handedly. Right. I think Virginia Tech's a little overrated, and I think West Virginia could be the real deal this year, especially if Grier plays anywhere near what he did at Florida when they were going through their streak there. So that's the other game for me. But with that being said, guys, thanks a lot for joining us on another episode of the Sports Trigger, and until next time.